Hello and welcome to the Happy Artichoke. My name's Rachel. I'm a doctorate prepared nurse and I had my thyroid removed in 2020 after being diagnosed with Graves' disease. And here I am finally going to tell you about how I found out that I had the disease and how I was diagnosed. So about 2 years before I was diagnosed, I started noticing some symptoms. Even though I was normally the freeze baby in my family, I was always hotter than everyone else. I also started getting palpitations or a racing heart, and I would pay a lot of attention to this because as a nurse I wanted to find out when they came. So I noticed it wasn't usually due to stress, it was pretty random. I also noticed that if I held my breath, which is called the Valsalva maneuver, I was able to make the palpitations go away. My heart pounded so hard on my chest that I wasn't able to cuddle my husband, or if I hugged someone, they could feel my heart beating my chest through my body. I also started snoring, which later I found out was due to the size of my goiter that was laying on my throat. So hindsight is really 2020. Sometimes I think about the symptoms I have and I wonder why I didn't bring them up sooner, but probably, as you know, sometimes you can just kind of explain things away until you can't. So I finally brought up to my doctor that I was having these palpitations, and she ordered an EKG, which was almost completely normal. There was a little bit of variables in it, so she also ordered an echocardiogram, which also came out normal. This was to make sure that everything was okay. In the meantime, my husband and I had been trying to get pregnant. It had been a couple years of passively trying, and a couple coworkers and friends had mentioned getting a thyroid test. The order for the thyroid test actually sat there for a long time. I didn't really think about it until I remembered that I also had to get my iron checked. So a couple months later, I went and got my iron checked, and I happened to get my thyroid tested as well. I mentioned this to a colleague that I had just gotten my labs done, and she very carefully and respectfully asked if I had also had my thyroid labs done because she had noticed this goiter on my neck. I had never noticed it. I know that at one point I remember feeling a lump on my neck when I was washing my body and just thinking that it was a normal variable and that maybe I just had never noticed it before. But after she pointed it out, I started taking my phone and looking at pictures and moving to the side, and I realized I had this huge goiter on my neck that I couldn't believe I just hadn't seen. And really, I think that just goes to show you how normal things can become if you see something every day. You just don't notice how it slowly grows. So immediately I started taking pictures of it and sending it to my friends and my husband and saying, how long have I had this? How did you not see this? But it was very obvious. I had this very big goiter on my neck. A goiter is a group of cells that look like a big lump on your neck. They're common in people who have an enlarged thyroid, as the thyroid sits on the front of the throat. So for the next 48 hours, I read every article I could about thyroid disease. I knew that my lab results were going to come back abnormal at that point. I found out that common symptoms for hyperthyroidism is racing heart, heat intolerance, irregular or light periods, weight loss, difficulty sleeping, tremors, fatigue, sweating. A lot of these things were things that I had experienced. I didn't remember this until looking back at some of the journaling I had done at the time, but I had actually noticed my hands shaking once, and I thought it was due to caffeine. My weight at the time seemed steady, but the reality is I actually was losing a lot of the muscle that I had at the time. I was at the gym, and I just could not get stronger no matter what I tried. And as I continued reading, I found out that 1 in 8 women will develop a thyroid disorder at some point in their life. So I found this both alarming and comforting because I knew there was a network of people out there who had been through some of the same things as I have. So I did what I could to study the treatment options so that I could be prepared to talk with my doctor about what would happen next. I also found out that having a thyroid disease can affect your fertility. So you are less likely to ovulate when you have hyperthyroidism. And so I wondered what this would mean for my future and the family that we were trying to create. Finally, my primary care doctor did call and confirm that I had thyroid disease. I had hyperthyroidism, so an overactive thyroid gland. She talked with me about treatment options, but recommended talking to an endocrinologist who would follow me. I found one, and he helped me understand the typical treatment plan and care for patients with hyperthyroidism. So in the United States, we typically take medications to kill the organ and then we remove it. Then, since the thyroid makes hormones that your body needs, you have to replace that for the rest of your life, so you need to take a hormone replacement pill forever. I found this all really hard to digest, especially since the drugs that you take to kill your thyroid are tetragenic, so they can't be taken while you're trying to get pregnant, so we had to put that on hold. Thankfully, the endocrinologist was very kind, and our conversation really put me at ease. and it was on the telephone, and my husband happened to be with me at home, so we were able to listen to everything together. I had a lot of questions about how this could happen. I wondered if maybe I had done something wrong that caused this to happen to my thyroid. I did some reading about the effects of a lack of B12 in the diet, and I was a vegetarian at the time, so I wondered if maybe I had caused it. Now, after living in France, I am so much more aware of the toxins that we have in our environment and our food in the United States, and I'll probably talk about that another time, but I'm pretty convinced that those were the reasons that my autoimmune disease, Graves' disease, was kind of flipped on, was because of the exposure to stress on my body, which can be from chemicals in foods as well as things in the environment. My endocrinologist also explained to me that it was safer for me to be hypothyroid than hyperthyroid. He helped me understand that if you're hyperthyroid, it's possible that you can have what's called a thyroid storm. And it's a very dangerous condition where your body temperature, your heart rate, and your blood pressure all skyrocket extremely high. And if it's not treated right away, you can actually die from this. Whereas if you're hypothyroid, the symptoms aren't so fun. Maybe you have fatigue, weight gain, things like that, but it's not deadly. The following week, we did a lot more tests. We checked my thyroid levels again. We did a couple more different types of thyroid levels, and then we tested for antibodies to know if it was caused by an autoimmune disease, which we found out it was. Then we also had to do some labs for my liver and bone marrow to make sure that any medication that we took to kill the thyroid would not have serious side effects on my body. We also did an ultrasound to make sure that the enlarged thyroid wasn't due to cancer or that there was any other nodules or lumps in there. This was all happening at the beginning of COVID, which of course was so terrible for so many people that I was able to do so many things virtually, like phone calls with my doctor, video appointments, things like that. So I was able to kind of move my treatment along very quickly in just about a month. So even though I trusted my endocrinologist, I wanted to see what other options were out there that I should explore before deciding to remove my thyroid. I decided to talk to a functional medicine nurse practitioner. She recommended getting some more lab draws, so I got my iron checked, B12, vitamin D, and others. And I also tried something called the elimination diet, and I can talk more about that in another video if you'd like, but that was very interesting for me and helped me identify things that were stressing my body that I didn't know they were. The theory behind the elimination diet is that certain foods can be inflammatory to your body, and so this helps you figure out what those things are so that you can eliminate it. So from the functional medicine standpoint, she asked me for about 18 to 24 months to improve my symptoms well enough to get off of the medication and try to have kids again. I originally had agreed to this, but after talking with my husband some more, we decided that it was more important for us to move forward with removing the thyroid so that we could actively try for a family. I also did some of my own research and found that about 40% of people who can get off of the thyroid medication stay off of it. Most people end up going back and getting their thyroid removed anyways. So we just decided, let's just do this, let's be done with it, and let's move on. My endocrinologist was very supportive of whichever direction I wanted to go, but ironically, he quoted the same thing that I had just read, which was that only 40% of people are really cured forever, and the other 60% have to go and actually have their thyroid removed anyways. He shared with me that it would take about a year to get my body back to the point of where I could become pregnant. So I have about 3 or 4 months of medications to get my thyroid smaller, and then we have to have surgery to remove it, and then another 4 to 6 months of getting my hormone levels back where they need to be to get pregnant. So this was a lot of information I'm sharing with you now because I hope that it's helpful for you. I ended up taking a medication called Tapazole for about 6 weeks. And it was really amazing on that medication because just after 2 weeks of taking it, I started noticing an improvement in my symptoms. I started gaining muscle. I was less fatigued. My palpitations went down. Eventually, in June of 2020, I did have thyroid surgery to have my entire thyroid removed. I'm now on Synthroid for life. I have no regrets. I have 2 beautiful little babies. We did not have any problems getting pregnant after I had my thyroid removed. It's been an interesting path, and I'm really honored to share it because I think that I can remember back to when I first learned that I had thyroid disease and an autoimmune disease and was trying to get pregnant, and I remember how scary that was and how emotional that was. I just want to share that even though it is very scary, and I want to validate for you that it's not easy to have a thyroid disease, and it's not easy to have to think through treatment options and to go through the healthcare system and find practitioners that are great for you and to advocate for yourself. It's not easy, but it can be done and you can have a really healthy and happy life afterwards. Let me know if you have other questions. I hope this was helpful to you. You can always reach out to me on my social media handles. You can find those at happyartichoke.com, where I have some articles about our life here in France. Also, I have some articles there about being a nurse, and soon I'll have an article out about this situation that I just described for you with finding out for the first time that I had thyroid disease and going through all of that. So hope that was helpful. Have a great day, and please leave any comments below. It would really help me out if you would subscribe. Thank you. Have a good day.